Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Aiza Sultan, your host for today's session, which is presented by Youth Speak Forum and powered by ISEC. So today we are going to talk about building a low investment tech startup. And to talk about it, we have today with our special guest today, who is a founder and CEO of Caterpillars. And she has an amazing journey to share with you all and expertise in the field of startup, which we will be talking about today. So, hello Hira, how are you feeling today?
Hello, Isa. Thank you so much for having me. I'm feeling very well.
Okay, so Hira, let's talk about, your journey as an entrepreneur, how you started, and what are your major learnings during the process and how it is going now.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want me to introduce myself first, or do you want me
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like just?
sure, you can introduce yourself.
Okay, so my journey with not in general with the startup, overall with the tech industry and with the work that I do currently started way back in I think 2014 or 15, I think. And it was I didn't want to be in the same industry. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. It kind of like happened by accident. I think there are some people along your journey who kind of like push you to be a better version of yourself. And I was just fortunate enough that I had those people at the beginning of my career who saw that in me, and he told me that this is a career path that I can take as well. I grew up in Karachi, did my bachelor's and master's from Pakistan as well, and obviously in business administration. So there was a part of me who always considered entrepreneurship as one of the career paths that I could take. But as in every Desi household, my dreams were basically kind of like limited to chartered accountancy, doctors, and engineering. But then life had some different plans for me. But then I started my career in a digital marketing space as an intern, and then from there I kind of like got exposed to the type of opportunities that we have in the digital kind of like world. And back then it wasn't a lot, but still it was at the booming stage. People kind of like sort of started to using websites. We knew what type of like opportunities are out there in the digital world, and I was lucky enough to be at the forefront of it, and I was lucky enough to have like some mentors who kind of like gave me my first chances to work in that industry. I worked in the corporate sector for around 4.5 years before, and at that time, I think that part of those 4 years were enough for me to kind of like understand what are my strengths, what type of career paths I could take, and what type of things that I was enjoying within those 4 years. And after, I think in 2016, I kind of like decided to not do my full-time job anymore. And again, this I'm talking about in the year 2017, I guess, 2016 or 2017. The term freelancing at that time was still not as prevalent when people knew what freelancing meant, but still it wasn't like a big thing. People didn't think of it as a career. And when I left my full-time job, I left it to become a full-time freelancer. And
So
again,
you
was
have realized by that time, freelancing has a, chance for you to grow.
Yes, and during those 4 years, I think I kind of like figured out, because I have this one strength. Because I mean, I think all of us kind of like through different feedbacks, through different mentors, through your bosses, we have that feedback that you have some sort of strengths, you have some sort of weaknesses. And my strength has always been that I was really good at strategies. I was really good at like writing. I had the creative mind that I could utilize to working with multiple clients as well. And that I obviously, through the feedback of my bosses, the people that I work for, they gave me that feedback. These are some of my strengths that I could play on. And I sort of like decided to leverage on those strengths. In 2016, I left my full-time job and I became like a full-time freelancer. Again, it was a very, I don't know, risky move, because at that time freelancing wasn't something that people could think that you can build an entire career of. And I had some savings in my bank account. And then I was like, okay, so I'll give myself 3 months and see where it goes. If it won't work out, then the job market is always open for me because now I have 4 years of experience. But it kind of like hit off. It kind of hit off in like within the 5 weeks of me starting. I started getting a lot of work from different clients. I kind of like started building my portfolio. I did another diploma in journalism, and then I started covering Pakistan's tech ecosystem on a lot of different international media and blogs as well. And then from there, I think my journey to entrepreneurship started. So I started my first company, which was named as Digital Doers back in 2017. It was a copywriting agency. We had employees from all over the world. It was a remote agency again before remote was a very
Very,
prevalent thing, because
yes.
in Pakistan, remote work started after COVID. But I
Mm.
used to run that remote agency back in 2017, and I started traveling the world. It was basically my exposure to what was already happening in a lot of countries, but it wasn't like a big thing in Pakistan at that time. I ran that agency for around year and a half. And then I went to the US for a fellowship. Over there, I again met a lot of people, was fortunate enough to make really good connections, expand my network. And then that's when I realized that the other company that I want to start, what would it be and what type of demographic and the target audience it would have. And I came back to Pakistan in 2019, and that's when I started Caterpillars. So Caterpillars, what it does is we are an accelerator in a talent marketplace for women. We build courses, and women who graduate from our programs or from our accelerators, we also help them land jobs in tech as well. I started Caterpillars in 2020, early 2020, and then we sort of like pivoted our business model last year. And we now have almost 150 plus women who have graduated from our programs. We have multiple tracks in Caterpillars. We have the track of freelancing. We have a track of product management. We also have an accelerator program for entrepreneurship. So that's what Caterpillars does. In
Right.
my personal capacity, I am a writer by heart. So I still do work as a freelancer sometimes, and also because of and we're going to discuss about startup later in this interview as well. But when you're running your own startup, it's just you don't have a lot of privileges that come with the job. You don't have a certain paycheck that comes to you every single time. Obviously, until unless you're running like a very big company, so you can start withdrawing salary. I still to pay my bills, I still do freelance. But now I have enough experience that I still only work few hours a day on my freelance projects, and I'm able to like make decent income out of it. So yeah, that's what I do. I run Caterpillars almost full time, and also I work as a sales copywriter and consultant for some of my clients, and they're everywhere in the world.
Okay, so that's really great to hear all of this, all of your experience. So what I picked up from it is you talked about feedback, that how much feedback is important, taking feedback from your mentors. So what would you advise to the youth taking up the constructive feedback? What would your advice to be to them?
I think I see feedback two ways, to be very honest. There is one part of feedback that comes in a very tangible form. For example, you have a teacher who just identify you in the class and say that, Isa, I feel you would be a really good doctor, or you would be a really good marketer, you would be a really good salesperson.
Hmm.
This is a very tangible feedback that a child who would take it might see that, okay, so I had a teacher who showed me this path. But there's some feedback that comes, that's something sometimes you have to nurture within your own self as well. I did have somebody who came to me and said that this is what something that you could do. But the term that I use feedback was, I was kind of like nurturing that feedback from my bosses, from the type of work that I was doing, what impact that work was creating, how many times my bosses were happy, how many times my bosses were unhappy, what sort of work that I was doing that I was enjoying the most, what sort of work that I was doing that was draining my energy.
So
This
there's
was
a
the
lot of
feedback.
reflection, like.
Yeah, this type of like feedback is more, I think, internal. You just observe what's happening all around you in your career, and you start making those, you can start connecting those dots. So I
Hmm.
think there is a tangible, and that doesn't mean that I did not receive any feedback, any tangible feedback from people that I've worked with. I did. Some of them like very vividly mentioned it to me that this is something that I'm really good at, this is something I'm really bad at. But a lot of it was my own kind of like reflections on, where do I stand, what do I do, what do I enjoy, what do I don't enjoy. And I started connecting those dots to make better decisions for my career. And I think, to answer your question, that's something that's very important.
Well, yes,
You do not wait for somebody else to come and say to you that, hey, this is something that I think you should be doing. A lot of it is your own work for your with your own self, asking yourself those hard questions, so
Mm,
you know what you are good at. And that's what I think self-awareness does to you. And
exactly.
I did that initially, so that helped me a lot in my career.
Yes, yeah, I believe that self-awareness is, very important aspect in your journey. And, for all of us to realize as youth, we need to understand ourselves, reflect on ourselves, and, realize what our strengths are so that we can work upon it and, make that part of our very strong so that we have that capability to move forward. And you talked about meeting different people and building connections, which made you realize that you need to build a startup. So what is the importance of networking, in an industry? What is the importance of networking, meeting different people from different countries and areas, and connecting and interacting with them? How much effect, how much good effect it has on you as an individual?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think meeting people who look like you, who come from the same culture, who work in the same capacity, versus meeting people who grew up in very different dynamics, who grew up in different countries, do not share the same religion, do not share the same culture. Both of them have kind of like its own importance. I think one of the biggest mistakes we do while we are networking is just because we grow up in a certain kind of like socioeconomic class, you go to a certain school, you go to a certain high school, you only keep your network within the same bubble that you grow up in.
Yes,
This
limited.
is why the most of the feedback that you receive is from the people who are exactly like you, who come maybe most of the time come from the same neighborhood as you, come
Mm,
from the same class, hang out in the same places. But for me, I think what's important is to just come out of that bubble and start talking to people who do not share your values, who do not come from the same culture, who may not have had the privileges that you have had, or maybe who have had more privileges than you have. So
yes.
that's when you ask, I think that's where your network kind of like start expanding in a way that would allow you to become more wiser, that will allow you to have better feedback of what you should be doing. That's something that I started doing, I think, very early in my career as well. The first mentor that I was talking about earlier, he was just a guest speaker who came to my university, and he was just giving the session. And for me, that was so fascinating. I was like, okay, so this person is not that old, which means he's not. And for us, I think at that time, just because of the teachers that we had, I was like, okay, so only the person who's had
Yeah,
15 years
that's
of
the.
experience is somebody who can teach me. But
Hmm.
this person is so young and he's just talking so much sense. So how about I just go to him and I speak to him? And that was the first move that I made. And that person decided to be my mentor. And he was very young. He was very intellectual. His session was really good. And that's when I realized the importance that actually started when you start speaking to people who are from a very different culture, who are from a very different background, and who do not look sort of like conform into the normal what you've been told. That's when you start learning the most. And
Yes.
when I started traveling and when I started working remotely, that kind of like solidified this definition solidified in my mind even more. That the and I always say that travel is the only expense in the world that makes you richer.
Yes.
And that's what the definition is when you are traveling, you're not only traveling because you need a break, you're traveling because you are absorbing the world outside of what you
Yes.
grew up
Around
in.
you, you are learning.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're just networking within the same kind of like bubble that you are in, I don't think so networking works. I'm the type of person who feel very overwhelmed when I'm at the conferences, when I'm surrounded by people. For me, networking is more about making those intentional connections, like reaching out to people who inspire you, reaching out to those who you think may have had the similar journey or different journey than you, and then build connections, build one-on-one connections instead of like just going to networking events and dinners and lunches and then just feeling very overwhelmed. I cannot do that because I have social anxiety. I cannot network at the conferences, but I'm really good at making like one-on-one connections when I'm speaking to
Connections.
people.
Yeah. So, here I would like to mention that in ISEC, this is one of the essence that we have, because as a youth, we have the same, concept like, if a person is old, he has good knowledge and he will be,
Yeah.
giving us great learnings. But in ISEC, you go to an 18-year-old, you go to a 20-year-old, he has that experience. And if you build a connection
Hmm.
with him, he is going to give you great learnings. And,
Yeah.
I have been in ISEC for 1 year, and I can say this for sure, this is the culture that we promote here in ISEC also, that it doesn't matter from where you come and what learning you have, but you have to build that connection that helps you grow, and that is what connects each one of us. And now, like, moving forward to startup, that there is a rise in startups, and youth is inclined towards having their own startup. They have a lot of ideas. This is a theme for Youth Speak Forum that I shared with you. We are giving opportunity to students to come up, and if they have any startup idea, so they can bring that to us. We will be training them, and they can present on the final day of event, that is on 6th of November. So this is our theme for this year that the Youth Speak Forum is working upon. So I would want to share your insight about startups, and how, what key takeaways this youth must have, and they must know.
Yeah, I think for the startup, anybody who wants to run a startup should kind of like um think of it in a way that before, like 10 years ago, starting a company was such a big thing within our own circles, within our industries. Even when I was in the university, the type of companies that I kind of like studied was just all those companies that I even right now cannot start. We were taught those traditional models of building a company where you have to have XYZ amount of money in your bank, where either you have very influential background, or either you found that groundbreaking idea that could change the world, and then you were able to raise so much money. I think traditionally the type of companies that we grew up like seeing around us was just at least I'm 30 years old right now, so my experiences were still like 6 years or 7 years older than yours. At least we grew up only seeing those companies that I feel that I wasn't able to start. This is why I think our generation was so risk averse, because we thought that, okay, so if you don't have that much amount of money,
Yeah,
and if my
investment.
dad didn't have money, I won't
I
be able to run
can't.
the company because I don't come from the business
Hmm.
background. And this is why a lot of people think, okay, so if you run a company, do you run a family business? Because
Yeah.
that's what people thought. But when you're talking about startups, I think the whole industry has changed. Any single person with any amount of knowledge, even if they don't know everything about the industry, even if they don't have money, no matter what type of background they've come from, everybody can start a startup. And that's why I think you've seen that there have been so many success stories that have come out of this industry, is because startup industry has democratized entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship and business has always been in the hands of few influential families all over the world, not just about Pakistan. That's how it has been everywhere. But when young people found out that they can start the company and they can scale it without having those connections, without their dad being an entrepreneur, without their family being running a family business, they can start and they can scale a company. That's when it changed everything. That's when we saw that you and I started using Kareem, you and I started using Uber. Whenever we travel, we started using Airbnb. And that kind of like changed everything. So for everybody who's starting a startup, first of all, a lot of it is new, even for them, even for people who are currently doing it, because this is not how companies used to make. This is a very new thing.
Hmm.
And the reason why it is so thriving, it is so fancy, because there are young people in it, because they are not conforming to the old ways of how the companies are run. Because now even if they don't have money, they're still bootstrapping the startup. They are injecting some amount of capital to it, and they're scaling it from point A to point B. But earlier it wasn't like that. So for somebody, I think, who's planning to start a startup, or who see that maybe running their own startup can be a career path for them, I don't think so they should be conforming to any traditional ways of like how the companies run. they should start from where they are and then figure out as in their journey. This is the beauty of running a startup business, that you don't have to have a lot of money, you don't have to have a lot of experience. All you need to have is an idea that you feel can impact the lives, that can make you money, and that you think the world needs as well. If all three things are in check, you can go and start a company tomorrow.
Hmm.
The starting a company is not hard now. It's just scaling that company to the top is hard. So anybody who want to start a company, they can go and start a company tomorrow.
Yeah, it's all about, identifying a problem and, giving a solution to it. It's just
Yeah.
you have an idea, you want to solve a problem. That's how we have been as a youth seeing it, because, we want to solve the problems that we face in a daily life. All these startups have been doing this for us. They have been solving these problems for us, making your life easier. So that's, what we want to promote, and we want the youth to come out and, don't feel you need a big platform, big idea, or big investment to come up and showcase your idea. You can come up with the idea, and we are going to help you to train you and connect you with the individuals, with the companies that can help in your investment, and they can help you further with that. So that's the whole idea about the on the Youth Speak forum about the startup. So I would also want you to, build a little bit about your own startup. It has, you mentioned it earlier, it has some programs. So, how does it work that, we need to enroll in that program, and, it's for a specific period of time. So, can you just build up on?
Yes, absolutely. So what Caterpillars does is, in very basic terminology, we build courses, and we call those courses accelerator program because they are not designed like courses. I mean, when I talk about courses, people think that they'll be like a recorded course that they'll purchase.
Mm,
We've designed it more like an accelerator program. So people who want to pivot their careers into tech, people who want to start their freelancing journey, people who want to scale their businesses, they can come to our website. They can enroll into any of accelerator program. Most of them are 12 weeks long. So you enroll yourself into
mm,
any of our program. You receive the curriculum that's been vetted by all the experts in the field. You receive coaching, you receive mentorship. So you basically become a part of that community for 12 weeks. And then once you graduate, we also help you connect with the employers that may hire you for the next tech role that they have open as well. So that's what Caterpillars does. Again, we are a very small company. We're only a team of 8 people right now, and a lot of it just changes so fast in the startup environment. One day your direction is like maybe A, the next day your direction would be totally different, which is B.
okay.
And you have so many plans that you think this is where the company would be going. But as you are running a company, and so that's when you realize that you were totally wrong. This is how it should work. You start working on it, then you realize that you're totally wrong. This is how you should do. And a lot of it is basically this. And that's why I think I love running Caterpillars, and I love the team that we have built so far, is because every single person who works for Caterpillars, they sort of share the same mindset
Yeah.
that we are in a company that's not a multinational company. There, one day we are talking about this problem, and the next day our problem would be something else totally different. But what they enjoy is that during that journey, the amount of impact that we are creating and the direction that we're headed towards. So they see the future just like us, and this is why they're working for us. So whoever wants to apply for Caterpillars program, you can go to our website, caterpillars.com. And maybe once you're editing it, you can put the website in the
Yeah, yeah,
description as
I
well.
will.
And you can get enrolled into any of our programs. Our freelance accelerator is one of the most famous accelerators in Pakistan. We have a lot of women from all over Pakistan who join it. And our next cohort would begin sometime in November as well. So feel free to join. We're accepting application for our product accelerator as well. So whoever wants to pivot their careers into product management, they can apply for that too. We're running another entrepreneurship accelerator in January. So we're taking applications for that too. So there's a lot happening
Lot of
on
opportunities.
that front as well. Yeah. So whoever wants to to get in touch, they can either message me on Instagram and I can send them the link, or they can just go to caterpillars.com.
I will be, sharing your all the handles that, for LinkedIn and Instagram, so they can reach out to you. Thank you so much, Hira, for all that you have, shared about all the learnings. It was, so great to hear from you. As an individual, personally, I have been following you on social media, and I love your content on LinkedIn also. And this program, your startup, and the kind of programs it has, personally, as a youth who wants to enter into a freelancing industry, can opt for it. So there is a lot of opportunity for us as a youth also. So it was great connecting with you, and knowing about your journey from you. And I hope that the audience, our youth, is also able to connect with you. And if they have any questions, they can reach out to you regarding your regarding the programs, and regarding the startup. Thank you so much, Hira.
Yes, absolutely. I'm always more than happy to help. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for all the good work that you guys are doing, and all the best for the 7th November event that you were talking about. I hope it goes well.
6th November, yeah.
6th November.
Yes.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much.
Take care.